Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. The world is my idea. Almost all of our sorrows spring out of our relations with other people. There is no more mistaken path to happiness than worldliness. So the problem is not so much to see what nobody has yet seen, as to think what nobody has yet thought concerning that which everybody sees. Life swings like a pendulum backward and forward between pain and boredom. Treat a work of art like a prince, let it speak to you first. Religion is the masterpiece of the art of animal training, for it trains people as to how they shall think. Great men are like eagles and build their nest on some lofty solitude. A sense of humor is the only divine quality of man. Happiness consists in frequent repetition of pleasure. It would be better if there were nothing. Since there is more pain than pleasure on earth, every satisfaction only transitory, creating new desires and new distresses, and the agony of the devoured animal is always far greater than the pleasure of the devourer. A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial. Faith is like love, it does not let itself be forced. They tell us that suicide is the greatest piece of cowardice, that suicide is wrong, when it is quite obvious that there is nothing in this world to which every man has a more unassailable title than to his own life and person. Mostly it is loss which teaches us about the worth of things. Change alone is eternal, perpetual, immortal. Compassion is the basis of morality. Wealth is like seawater. The more we drink, the thirstier we become, and the same is true of fame. The person who writes for fools is always sure of a large audience. To feel envy is human, to savor schadenfreude is devilish. We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people. Every miserable fool who has nothing at all of which he can be proud adopts as a last resource pride in the nation to which he belongs. He is ready and happy to defend all its faults and follies tooth and nail, thus reimbursing himself for his own inferiority. Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. We seldom think of what we have, but always of what we lack. If we were not all so interested in ourselves, life would be so uninteresting that none of us would be able to endure it. Life is a constant process of dying. It is difficult to find happiness within oneself, but it is impossible to find it anywhere else. Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world. Every parting gives a foretaste of death, every reunion a hint of the resurrection. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free. The shortness of life, so often lamented, may be the best thing about it. Marrying means to have one's rights and double one's duties. Philosophy is a science, and as such has no articles of faith. Accordingly, in it nothing can be assumed as existing except what is either positively given empirically, or demonstrated through indubitable conclusions. Hope is the confusion of the desire for a thing with its probability. Buying books would be a good thing if one could also buy the time to read them, but as a rule the purchase of books is mistaken for the appropriation of their contents. The life of every individual, viewed as a whole and in general, and when only its most significant features are emphasized, is really a tragedy, but gone through in detail it has the character of a comedy. We can regard our life as a uselessly disturbing episode in the blissful repose of nothingness. No rose without a thorn, but many a thorn without a rose. The assumption that animals are without rights and the illusion that our treatment of them has no moral significance is a positively outrageous example of Western crudity and barbarity. Universal compassion is the only guarantee of morality. The safest way of not being very miserable is not to expect to be very happy. I have long held the opinion that the amount of noise that anyone can bear undisturbed stands in inverse proportion to his mental capacity and therefore be regarded as a pretty fair measure of it. If we suspect that a man is lying, we should pretend to believe him, for then he becomes bold and assured, lies more vigorously, and is unmasked. There are very few who can think, but every man wants to have an opinion, and what remains but to take it ready-made from others, instead of forming opinions for himself. It often happens that we blurt out things that may in some kind of way be harmful to us, but we are silent about things that may make us look ridiculous, because in this case effect follows very quickly on cause. What a person is for himself, what abides with him in his loneliness and isolation, and what no one can give or take away from him. This is obviously more essential for him than everything that he possesses or what he may be in the eyes of others. If life, the craving for which is the very essence of our being, were possessed of any positive intrinsic value, there would be no such thing as boredom at all. Mere existence would satisfy us in itself, and we should want for nothing. There is some wisdom in taking a gloomy view, in looking upon the world as a kind of hell, and in confining one's efforts to securing a little room that shall not be exposed to the fire. Rascals are always sociable, and the chief sign that a man has any nobility in his character is the little pleasure he takes in others' company. There is not much to be got anywhere in the world. It is filled with misery and pain. If a man escapes these, boredom lies in wait for him at every corner. Nay more, it is evil which generally has the upper hand, and folly that makes the most noise. Fate is cruel and mankind pitiable. To be shocked at how deeply rejection hurts is to ignore what acceptance involves. We must never allow our suffering to be compounded by suggestions that there is something odd in suffering so deeply. There would be something amiss if we didn't. If the world were a paradise of luxury and ease, a land flowing with milk and honey, where every Jack obtained his Jill at once and without any difficulty, men would either die of boredom or hang themselves, or there would be wars, massacres, and murders, so that in the end mankind would inflict more suffering on itself than it is now to accept at the hands of nature. Sleep is the interest we have to pay on the capital which is called in at death, and the higher the rate of interest and the more regularly it is paid, the further the date of redemption is postponed. For the world is hell, and men are on the one hand the tormented souls and on the other the devils in it. A poet or philosopher should have no fault to find with his age if it only permits him to do his work undisturbed in his own corner, nor with his fate if the corner granted him allows of his following his vocation without having to think about other people. Animals hear about death for the first time when they die. that I could clamber to the frozen moon and draw the ladder after me.